Welcome to the next installment of the Train Vicar. Today I want to give an overview of the locomotives and rail cars and multiple units that are in use in New Zealand. There are quite a few of them, in my counting about 414. In this overview, I will include those locomotives, electric multiple units, and rail cars that travel on the main line. So I won't include those that are just operating on some of the heritage lines or in museums or something like that, but the motive power that travels on the main line. I will also not include the various track maintenance equipment, just as tempers or um, stabilizers or things like that, but just the actual motive power that is used for freight and passengers. So let's get into it.
I've sorted the motive power by country of origin, and that's actually quite an interesting picture of for New Zealand. If we look at that, about 20% of our units are from Korea, then 18% from China, 17% from Spain, 13% from the USA, 12% from Canada, 10% from New Zealand, 7% from Japan, 3% from England, and less than 1% from Australia. And that's the country of origin where it was in where this motive power was initially built. It's not, for example, where they were rebuilt, because quite a few of the vehicles were rebuilt either in Australia or New Zealand, but the original country where they were built is another one of those, for example, the USA or Canada. Um, so so let's unpack that a little bit. First of all, the 20% of the units that come from South Korea, this is actually 83 units that were built by Hyundai Rotem for the Wellington suburban lines. They electric multiple units consisting of two cars, a power car, and a trailer. So this is actually New Zealand's most numerous train, these electric multiple units that operate in Wellington. Well, we'll continue to work ourselves down the scale a little bit. So here is another graphic that shows the motive power by number of units from each country where they were manufactured. And next in line is 73 units from China. And this actually also consists of just one class, the DL class diesel electric locomotives. These diesel electric locomotives were imported from 2011 onwards, and they operate freight trains and sometimes permanent weight trains in the North Island only. They are common on most lines of the North Island by now. Well, with that, we come down the list with 72 units built in Spain. Again, this consists of a single class, namely the AM class, which are electric multiple units that operate in Auckland. In contrast to the Wellington units, which operate at 1700 volts DC, these electric multiple units in Auckland operate under an AC current, and that has 25 kilovolts with 50 hertz frequency. These units were introduced from 2014 and by now operate all suburban trains in Auckland. They will also in future operate the suburban trains to Pukekohe, so to the current southern extension of the Auckland suburban train network. And with that, we come to the 54 units that were manufactured in the United States of America. This number consists of 2 or 3 classes, depends how you count them. So the first class is the DX class, which by now is divided into the DXR class, these 2 units, of which there are only 2. That's the DXR class. And the rest of the 46 units are either the DXC class, here with air chutes for the Otira tunnel, or the DXB class that operate mainly in on the other South Island lines. These locomotives were initially introduced to the North Island, but by now only operate in the South Island. And these days they are the main motive power in the South Island. The other 6 units that were manufactured in the USA are the DH class, which is a heavy shunting diesel electric locomotive, and that is used in Auckland for shunts there. For example, they used to run to the port, but now they mainly shunt in the shunting yards there, and also go to sidings in Auckland and around Auckland. Well, with that, we get to the 49 units from Canada, and that's a little bit more varied. First of all, we have the DF class from 1979, which is now divided into the DFT and DFB class. By the latest information I've got, there are now 29 of these locomotives. Then there are 18 DC class locomotives. These were originally built as DA class locomotives in Canada, and then were later rebuilt in the 1980s as DC class locomotives in Australia. There is also still one original DA class locomotive from Canada that's operated by Steam Incorporated quite regularly on the mainline, DA1401. And finally, there is one DBR locomotive that's often found on the main line, and that is operated by the Glenbrook Vintage Railway. Let's get on to the 40 New Zealand built units. First of all, there are, I think, approximately 31 DSC class shunting locomotives. That would be consisting of 28 locomotives that are operated by Kiwi Rail, 2 that are operated by industrial users, that is Freezing Works, and 1 operated by the Waitara Preservation Society, even though that might not actually count as going onto the main line, but I put it in there anyway. Then there are 4 DSJ diesel electric shunting locomotives built in New Zealand from Japanese kit sets. After that, we get to the heritage units which operate on New Zealand's main line. There is, first of all, the RM standard class rail car operated by the Pahiatua Railway Society, and then there are several steam locomotives. So there is the WW operated by the Glenbrook Vintage Railway, one AB 608 operated by Steam Incorporated, uh, also called Passendale. And then there is the one JA operated also by Steam Incorporated, not this one, but another JA. And finally, WA operated by Gisborne City Vintage Railway. I don't have the photo of that, but that is the last one I count amongst the New Zealand built units. That brings us to the 29 units manufactured in Japan. So, first of all, there are 24 diesel electric shunting units from the 1980s, and they are the DSG class, which are still very active today. And then there is the DJ class diesel electric locomotive, which once was all across the South Island. Now, as far as I know, there are around 5 units still left, 4 operated by Dunedin Railways and 1 operated by Mainline Steam in Wellington. Well, that brings us to the 13 units built in England. These are the EF class electric locomotives that are used on the North Island main trunk. Initially, there were 22 of these built. It seems I thought there always were 15 in service, but maybe it's only 13. They are currently being refurbished, and they will continue to run on the North Island main trunk for some time yet. Well, and then we come to the single unit built in Australia. You remember this is just the locomotives and multiple units that I'm counting. And here I'm counting DA1431, operated by Steam Incorporated. This was actually built in Australia, even though it was designed in the US, and most of the others were manufactured in Canada. A few years ago, there would have been a few more units that could be counted as those built in Australia, but this is 2023, and so this is where I have the cutoff.
Well, and now I have to link all this to this video as a train vicar. And it's a bit difficult because I don't have much time. So I just want to say that there's a huge variety of locomotives out there. And even though in New Zealand they try to standardize. And with that, I just thought I'll read a few verses from the book of Revelation, where it says, "After this I looked, and there before me was a great multitude that no one could count, from every nation, tribe, people, and language, standing before the throne and in front of the Lamb." So even though we are here in good old New Zealand, it might be good if that we would have a few more locomotives from built in New Zealand. It's actually great to have this variety on our rails as well. And of course, we don't have anything from Africa, but who knows, in future we could still have that. So I hope that this reflects the multitude that is also in the church here today.